Also, a minimum of 80% attendance is required to be eligible for the final quiz. Also, a minimum score of 70% on the final quiz is required to be eligible for the certificate. So those are the few things I would like to announce. Mr. Emmanuel, please go ahead. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I still want to use this medium to thank the management of ICTG for giving me this opportunity or this privilege to take this training. And I appreciate everyone for joining, even those that joined last week and those that joined today. I appreciate everyone. So today we are going to look at, I don't know, is my voice audible or so before I go far?
Very audible, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, audible.
Okay, thank you very much. So today we are going to be looking at Azure architecture and services. So basically, we'll look at everything that we need to know about Azure, like the architecture and how all those things is formed, how people see Azure from inside and even from outside. So we are going to basically cover all those things. So let's just continue. Just go. So these are our learning parts. So today we are going to look at Azure architecture and the components. So we are going to see those components and we are going to understand regions and availability zones. We are going to understand subscriptions and resource group. Like last week in our class, we created the resource group because when we wanted to create our virtual machine, we needed a resource group where the virtual machine is going to reside. So even last week also, we created a virtual network, but today we are going to still look at it in depth so that we'll have understanding of what it is. And we are still going to look at storage. So the way we have hard drive, Azure also, they have their own storage as well. So we are going to look at storage services, redundancy option, file management, and migration. Then to cut it, we will now look at identity, access, and security, because it's not enough for you to have all these resources. It's not enough for you to understand Azure architecture and their components. It's not enough to understand the computer networking. The identity, access, and security is also important. We're going to look at directory services, we're going to look at authentication methods, and we're going to look at security models. So let's just go. So now, for sure, for you to have an Azure subscription, first of all, you need to have an Azure account. And for you to have an Azure account, it's either you are paying monthly or you are paying yearly. So aside that, we have free Azure account like the one Bro Kennedy is trying to create that is requiring a dollar card. And we have free student account like some schools, like some of all these big universities like Covenant University, Unilag, schools like that. Some of them, Microsoft give their students access to free Azure credit, whereby they can create resources and learn. So Microsoft Learn is also there. So another thing we'll do today is I'm going to open Microsoft Learn. So from Microsoft Learn, Microsoft is giving a free learning sandbox, whereby we can practice anything we want to practice. You have access to the Azure resources as if it's a live environment, which we are going to look at today, so that at least we can still get our hands dirty and still do so many things. So first of all, I'm just starting as if this is the first day of the class. First of all, it's either you create a free Azure account before you could even access Azure resources, because Azure resources is pay as you go. As you use, you pay. So let's say you are creating a virtual machine and you shut it down. Once it is turned off, you are not being paid or charged for anything. That's why it is pay as you go. So now let's just go. So we are going to look at the architectural components now. So under the architectural components, we are going to, this is what we are going to look at. This is our objective for this particular module. We are going to describe Azure regions, region pairs. I'm going to explain how all these things can impact your architecture and how all these things can actually make your architecture like have redundancy and will be able to withstand any fault tolerance or any disaster. So the next one, we are going to look at availability zone. So we are going to understand availability zone. We are going to understand Azure data centers. Like last week, I was making mention of Microsoft, they have their data centers in different regions. They even have one now closer to us here in South Africa. So formerly, the closest region to us is West Europe, but now we have a region here in South Africa, meaning that they are coming to Africa gradually. Before you know now, they may even have one region in Lagos, Nigeria. They can even have one maybe in Ghana. So they are gradually coming into Africa. So we are going to describe Azure Resources and Resource Group. So we'll understand what Resource Group is and the resources Azure has to provide. Then we are going to describe subscription. So this subscription now is just a big word, but it's more or less like if you sign up for Azure, let's say you create that free Azure account, it's more or less as if you are going for a subscription. You are actually getting a subscription. So the next one we are going to understand is management groups. Then we will now understand the hierarchy of resource group, subscription, and management group. So now let's go. Here we have regions. So now for regions, regions represent a collection of data centers like we have here. We have Canada East. You see, Microsoft have so many data centers, but in Africa, sorry, we only have South Africa North and South Africa West. Not only Africa, also like in Brazil now, we have only one data center here. But in some regions like Europe, we have a lot of data centers. Like in Germany, we have data centers in so many areas of Germany, West, North, Northeast, and German Central. We have so many data centers, and same with Italy. So formally, if we look at the map now, this is West Europe, this is Europe. So most times when I was creating my resources the other time, I choose West Europe as the area where I want to create my resources, because if you are creating your resources, if the resources is closer to if you are selecting a region that is closer to where you are creating your resources, it is easier for you. So if you are trying to retrieve data from the data center, it will be faster because the region you picked is closer. Imagine now maybe I'm creating a resource and this is where I am. I'm in Nigeria. Then I go and pick a region in South Central US. See the distance. One, Azure is even going to charge me more because the money they will charge me to fetch the data to my resource here will be different from the amount they will charge me to fetch the data from my resource to Nigeria here. So region is very important. So they provide flexibility and scaling. Why is Microsoft having regions like this? It's because one, they know that anything can happen. Imagine now the other time that there was fiber cuts and it affected a whole lot of things in the world. Like everybody felt it. Even some organizations said they could not work because that fiber cut really affected them. Even we in church, I remember that time that was when we started CBT for the Deacons Board training. We couldn't even use internet at all that period. Fiber cut. So those are part of the disaster recoveries that makes Microsoft provide all these regions. Should in case some people might ask, okay, what if something happened to one data center? Microsoft has gone far as they have data centers under the water. Even if you go as far as maybe breaking any of their data, maybe some of their enemies go and destroy their data center so that their customers will they don't want to do business with them again. They have backup. They always have backup. That's why they have so many regions around the world. Another point again is you can select regions close to your users. So if you are selecting regions close to your users, it is better. Like I made mention with the example I gave. If you are in Africa, you now go and select a region that is far. It's far away from you. So it is not even good for you to even deploy your resource in a region that is far, except on some exemptions. Because sometimes you may want to create a region that will say the resource is not available in this region. There are some resources that you can't create in some region. You can only create them in some specific region. So in that case, that's when you can now go for a region that is far from you due to the resource you want to create. So that's region. So we can see Azure offers more global regions than any cloud provider. They have 50 plus regions representing over 140 countries. So this is on record. We can go online and check. So Microsoft has more data centers than even AWS, than even Google. They have a lot of data centers, even like just to keep their customers' files and all safe and secured. So let me drop a link so that we can just go there. Maybe we can just check it out later to see the regions that Microsoft have. Just a moment. Let me just get it here. So let me copy. So okay, I'll drop them later. So let's go now. Now we have talked about region. So like in our objective, we are going to talk about region. We are going to understand what region is. So basically, this is Microsoft regions. Like all these regions now, all these dots we are seeing here is representing a data center. It's representing a data center. So they represent a data center. So that's for the regions. So let's go. Now we will now look at availability zone. So this availability zone now is more or less like what is happening in a particular region. In a particular region. Okay, Microsoft now, they are telling you that they are giving you a region. Even inside that region, the availability zone. In a region, there is redundancy, there is backup. So your files in this region is being copied to two different availability zones. This, okay, let me give this instance. Let me use Nigeria as a case study. Let's say this region now is in Ota. It's in Ota. So what Microsoft would do is that since they have a region in Ota, Ota now is the central name of the region. So they will have an availability zone at, let's say, maybe some places close to Ota. Forgive me, I don't really know some places in Ota. Let me just use some examples. Okay, let's say they will have an availability zone in Abulegba, and they can have another availability zone in, let's say, in Yaba. So they can have another availability zone, let's say, in Lekki. So in a region, they have different availability zone. So some people will say they want their, depending on the availability zone you want to pick. Some will say they want zone 2, zone 3, or zone 1. So depending on the zone you select. So what this means is that, okay, now this is Microsoft Data Center. All these are servers where we have, so that customer now, if you are using Microsoft Availability Zone, your files are in this rack. You have backup even in that same place or town where the availability zone is. You have another backup there, and those files are still copied again to another availability zone in another area in that same region. So that's availability zone. So availability zone now, in a nutshell, like let's just say in a nutshell, availability zone is a physical, it's physically separate locations within an Azure region. So this takes availability set to the next level. So like even if maybe like all these things is more or less like I'm trying to maybe like, but that's the truth. So all these availability zones is actually a good one. For example, availability zone is equipped with independent power, cooling, and network system. Of course, in their data centers, they have all these things for you. So imagine now if you're managing your data center, because of some economic situations and some crises, I know somebody will say, is Microsoft not charging us? But removing those headache from you, trying to like manage your staffs, turn on the server, turn off the server, do all those things, all those maintenance, at least you're not doing all that. So you have regions and you have availability zones. So the difference now that we can pick from region and availability zone is regions now are separate, like different places where Microsoft have their data centers. So under regions, they now have availability zone. So availability zone now is under a region. So that's just what we have for that. So we can see how they are connected. They are connected through private fiber optic network. So, and which makes it very fast and good for us to use. So if you have any question, you can raise your hand, bro. Victor, you can just signal me so that we can pause and just answer the questions. And so,
All right, no problem, sir.
okay, thank you, sir. So another advantage of availability zone is if you are using availability zone, imagine what happened the other time that there was fiber cut. People were still working because Microsoft have backup. So automatically you will still work. Even if there is downtime, you can continue working. So that's one advantage of using availability zone. So all these things are configurations. Like when we were creating the virtual machine the other time, I was like, okay, I don't want availability zone because I know it's going to eat my money since it's not a production environment. I was running on a production environment. Let's say that day-to-day activities is happening for sure. I'm going to use availability zone, so that should in case if anything happen, the MD will not come and meet me like, what's happening? Why can I not access resources? So to solve that. So now let's look at region pairs. So region now, they're like, as the name implies, pairing of two things together. So we can see region pair. So Microsoft now, they are pairing North Central US and South Central US. So these are the pairing that happens, North Europe to West Europe and the likes. So now each Azure prefer at least 300 miles of separation between data center and regional pairs. So like what it means is that at least they make sure that within 300 miles, they have data center that are interconnected with each other. And they have services that provide automatic replication to the paired region. When we say replication, it's just like what is happening here, the same things that is happening here, the same files you have here, you have the same files copied to another location again. So meaning that if this location goes down, you have your files available. So you won't have any issue. So in an outage, so when you want to do a recovery, maybe if one region is out, so it is easier for you to even recover your files. So Azure System Update rules out pairs region. So automatically what it means is that if, for instance, now they are running updates on one particular region, so the other regions that your devices, that your resources, the other region that they have pairing relationship with, so you are going to be moved to those regions automatically, even if the update is supposed to impact your productivity, it won't impact your productivity because of all these region pairs. So firstly, we talked about regions, we talked about availability zones. Now we are talking about region pairs. So now let's go. Now this brings us to Azure resources. So as time will permit us, we created a virtual machine. Today we are going to create a storage account. We are going to create a virtual network separately. We are going to create an app service, then SQL database, then Azure function. So basically now these are resources. So more or less like we have our physical resources. Example of a physical resources is, let's say, your computer. Your computer now, your physical computer can be that's what Microsoft is now calling a virtual machine. They are calling it a virtual machine because it's not a system you can touch. It's something that you can't touch. You can only connect to it via the internet and using remote desktop, like we did the other time, where we downloaded a remote desktop client, then we connected to our resources, then we had access to the virtual machine. So today we are going to even still connect to that virtual machine, because if we create a storage account, I would like us to create a file share that we are going to connect to the Windows server so that we can send some files to that file share, then we'll see them in play in the cloud. And another thing again, we'll be talking about virtual network. Like someone asked a very important question, like how are these resources connected together? So with virtual network, you can connect different resources together, just like we have our routers and switches in our on-premise environment. So with those routers and switches, you can actually connect different computers, different resources together. They can actually share files and communicate. You can actually remote from one computer to the other computer as an admin. Maybe, for instance, the user is having issues with the network configuration in offices. You can do all that. Same in the cloud. So with virtual network, you can do all that, just like the way we have our RJ45. We connect it to our system. So this virtual network now has same thing in the cloud, whereby once you create a resources like a virtual machine, it picks a port from the virtual network and connect to the virtual machine so that the resources can actually communicate with each other. So app service. So this app service now is more or less like a platform as a service. So all this we have here, like last week we talked about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. All these services are actually platform as a service. So automatically Microsoft now, they're giving you their application platform. Okay, bring your application, come and run your application. You don't need to be managing the underlying infrastructure. Let's do it for you. Come, bring it. Let's run those applications. Let's keep it running and let's keep it going. So the SQL database as well, with some of us that are SQL database expert, we know that even to install SQL database sometimes it takes time. And aside installing it, maintenance. Sometimes one may not know that just one single service that is not running can a database administrator can troubleshoot for 3 days. Sometimes they may be running some queries and they are getting errors. And it may even be maybe updates, Windows update. But if you go into SQL database service in Azure, Microsoft does those updates for you before they even push any updates. They make sure it is tested and they make sure it doesn't cause any issue. Even if it causes any issue, there will be an incident alert automatically to tell you that, okay, this is what happened and they are going to fix it. So Azure Functions now, this one is more or less like for automation. You want to automate things, you want to create prompts to automate your day-to-day tasks, which we are going to do. So let's go. So now these are resources. Azure has so many resources, but these are just the ones that we could just bring to talk about. But as we proceed or as we go on with the class, we are going to understand and we are going to see several resources that Azure have for us. So now, resource group. So like we make mention the other time. So a resource group basically is just like a house. If you maybe like a house now, let's say you have a house, you have a foundation. For sure, there must be a foundation where the house is laid. So this resource group now is more or less like the foundation, where you have your rooms, you have your living room, you have your kitchen, you have your restroom and all. So resource group now is more or less like that container where you store your resources. So some organizations, for easy auditing, they create resource group for all their resources in the sense that for virtual machines have their own resource group. Storage accounts have their own resource group. They don't just create storage account and virtual machine, everything in the same resource group. So you can use resource group for auditing. You can use it to isolate your resources so that even if somebody come into the network, it won't be difficult for the person to understand. Imagine you open a resource group, you are seeing virtual network gateway, you are seeing virtual machines, you are seeing storage account, you are seeing web service, you are seeing SQL server. One will be confused. So with resource group, you can group your resources. So, and again, resources can also exist in different regions. So what it means is that, let's take, for instance, now, you have a resource group. It doesn't mean that because you deployed your resource group in West Europe, you can't have resources inside that resource group that are actually hosted in East US or maybe South Africa. So it doesn't matter. The resource group can house your resources. Resources can be moved to different resource group. Yes, you can move resources from one resource group to another. Let's say, for instance, now that organization, maybe they have made that mistake of creating all their resources in one resource group. They can as well move their resources from that resource group to another resource group so that they can arrange everything and everything should be working fine. So application can utilize multiple resource group. Yes, you can use multiple resource group for applications. So that's it for resource group. So let's just see another fact again that we have. So another thing again with resource group. So, but as we proceed, I'm going to still explain something because with resource group, you can also create security boundaries, but we are going to still explain that as we go. So now this brings us to Azure subscriptions. So like we have been mentioning things. Azure subscription provides you with authenticated and authorized access to Azure accounts. So without subscription, you don't have the right to create any resources in Azure. That's why, as Brother Kennedy was mentioning, that he wanted to create a free Azure credit and he couldn't create it because he was trying to use his Naira card. So Microsoft now, what they are doing is that they are very intentional now about people trying to create a trial account. They know that sometimes people will just go and create saying that they want to purchase, but meanwhile they don't want to purchase. They just want to test some things. So that is why they stopped Nigerians from using their normal credit card, because then I was able to use my MasterCard. It worked. But I wonder they just had to stop it, maybe because they want to know their serious customers and the customers that maybe they just want to try the product. So now we have billing boundaries. So billing boundaries now basically is more or less like we have here now. we have test subscriptions, we have production subscription, and we have development subscription. So basically now, this is an ideal environment. So this is one advantage of Azure. So with Azure, you can have several subscriptions. You can have development subscription for your developers so that they can actually create resources there. Then you can have test subscription. Let's say they are running the deployment. It can be in test before it's now moved to production. So this is where you develop. After you develop, you now move those resources to the test subscription so you can test it. After you test it, you now move it to the production subscription. So it's more or less like giving you ways where you can manage and control your resources so that at least you won't have any issue. So in terms of access control boundary, so when we say access control boundary now, because you can't just give everybody access to your resources. You can't give everybody access to your resources. So you need to manage access. So for you to manage access, you can manage access even from the subscription level. You can manage access from the resource group level. You can manage access from even the resource itself. So like we look from the diagram here. So we have billing account. So this is the billing account. So for you to have a billing account, you need to have a billing process. So it travels down from your billing process. You have your invoice. This invoice now is for this Azure subscription. This other invoice is for the subscription here. Then the invoice varies as the case may be. So you can only use one payment method. You can use one payment method, but depending, you can add as many payment methods as you want, depending. But it is advisable you use one payment method so that at least it will be easy for you to account and give your clue. So that's for billing boundaries and access control. So this is basically Azure subscription. So this is a subscription for you. A subscription now, first of all, you have the Azure account now. We can see this card here. You need a card, you need to pay. So once you pay, you have access to the subscription, either the developer subscription. So some organizations, they don't really have time for all this. They just have one, and that's their production, because it's only in UK or US that they can be spending their dollars like this, because at least the currency is there, so they can easily spend it. But here that we know that dollar now is almost 1,700. One have to be conservative. Even organizations too, they are finding it difficult. Some are even finding it difficult to even pay. So this is just more or less like an ideal environment, but not everybody practice their own subscription this way. So let's go. So now we look at management group. So management group now, let's see you have a subscription now. So management group now includes like from the diagram here, we can see different subscription under this management group. So this is how resources travel. So your account now that you use to create the Azure is actually in this area. So your subscription now, you can use one account and create multiple subscriptions. It doesn't mean that because maybe, for instance, now you want to have a, let's say, let me use this scenario. Let's say you just created an Azure account, then you now purchase a subscription, and you don't know that your business is going to expand. Like we always pray for expansion. Maybe your business now expand. You can buy another subscription. So once you buy another subscription, you can as well provision resources in that subscription. Like some people, they prefer to manage their resources in different subscriptions so that they can manage their spending. So some will not want to just provision everything in the same resources, so they don't manage their spending. So subscription inherit conditions applied to the management group. So any condition that is applied to them, all these are exam questions, like things that can come out in the exam. So any particular condition you apply to this management group, this was anybody that have owner access to this management group has access to all the subscriptions, including the subscriptions, the resource group, and the resources. So that's why giving permission in this management group is very risky. So one has to watch it and check very well before they do that. So 1,000 management group can be supported in a single directory. So you can have up to 1,000 management group. So management group now, as it implies, you can use it to manage different subscriptions. So now it doesn't mean that one cannot have another management group here. with multiple subscription also. So that's just it. So management group tree can support up to 6 level of depth. So this is a management group tree. This is a management group tree where we have the management group, we have subscriptions under the management group, then we have resource groups. Then under the resource group, now we now have the resources. Like you can only, that's why when we wanted to create that virtual machine, we have to create a resource group, because you can't just create a resources just like that. A resources has to exist in a resource group. So a resource group is very important. So like you see in this environment, they have their virtual machine, they have their virtual network, and they have their database. This one is more or less like a storage account where you just have your tables here. Then here now they have another resource group again where they have their database. Probably the virtual machine here, they have an application running on it that talks to this database, that this database queries to get informations, like anytime they want to maybe get feedback, orders, and the rest. So that's just it. So now we are going to have a little break. So now we did all this last week. We created a virtual machine last week. So I'm going to be dropping some questions in the chat so that we can answer those questions. So everybody in your seated position, you can just stand up and just do some exercise, because this is almost 40 something minutes now that we have so let's just stand up, do some exercise. You can just stand up from your seat while I drop the question. Just stretch your hands, like stretch. Let me drop some questions that we'll answer shortly. So just a moment. So the questions I'm going to ask is actually open-ended questions, meaning that you can just drop your chat, you can just chat, you can just type what you want to type, like on the chat. So I'm going to drop it. So like, let me drop the first one, then we're going to vet it. So I'll be expecting everybody to make attempts. So let's just make attempts. So everybody is right. Let's just make attempt to answer the question. So let me just drop it. So let me just see if we're actually with us. Where is my chat again? Okay, over here. So let me just drop the first question. Okay, let me widen my screen. Oh. So everybody, let's go to the chat so that we can answer this question. So I'm waiting for answers. Let's go. Let's do it. We can do it. Are we there? Are we still there? Okay. Let me see. Answers coming in. Yes. That's great. I need more answers soon. I need more answers here. I need more answers. So let's not be shy. Let's just answer. Let's answer. So going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Stop. So the answer to that question is region. So what Microsoft Azure objects contain multiple data centers that are connected by low latency and network is actually region. So let me drop the next question so that we can answer that one too. While we are just taking a break, so that at least we can stretch our hands. We can actually we can just move, like just take a little walk, sitting down in a spot for 30 minutes is not easy. So like our doctor told us the other time that we should always take exercise and always move. So we can just move from one point to another so that we can actually get that relief. So let me just drop this one too. Okay. Where is my chat? Okay, my chat is here. Let's go. Yeah, it's here. So this one is quite tough. Let me see. Let me see. This one is more or less like an applied question to what I thought. So it's applied. It's something that, okay, let's just try. Let's try. Let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. I'm happy with the response too. Like, I'm happy with the response. We are really following up and we are really getting it. So I'm happy with the response, really. I'm very happy. So who is going first? Oh, wow, 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 wow. This is very okay. This is very okay. We're really doing well. We're really doing well though. Wow. We are really doing well. Wow, wow. This is good. Glory to God. Okay. Wow. Somebody picked all the answers. Wow, that is okay. That is okay. That is okay. That is okay. Okay. So I think we need to stop. We need to put the answer to that question. So let me confirm the answer. Let me confirm. So to that question, actually, the answer is A and B. High availability is part of one of the features and benefit of availability zone. Yes. Then low latency replication is also part of it. Like I made mention of replication. So it's part of it. So we are all correct. We are all correct. So let me just paste the last question. So this one now, please, I want us to answer it. So the question is, describe what a resource group is on Azure and give an example of best practice when using one. So please, I need your answer. So what is an example of best practice when using a resource group? Let us just try. Let us just try. Let's give it a try. From next week, we'll be having lab. I'll be giving some, let's say, like somebody made mention in the feedback form that we had that there should be projects. So I'm going to give a project. So we're going to share ourselves into groups. Then we're going to take a project, probably after the whole training, so that at least the project will be tailored to what we have done. Okay, so I'm waiting for answers, my daddies and my brothers and sisters. I'm waiting for answers. Answers, please. Answers. 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 Oh, answers.
That's the question again.
The question is, describe what a resource group is on Azure and give an example of best practice when using one. Like we made mention of resource group now. Let me even define what there is. Let me even go back. So at least we'll pick, so at least it will guide us to explain what resource group is. Where's my mouse? Where is it going? Come here. Okay, let me go back to where we have a resource group so that at least we can, okay, this is it on the board. So from here now, we can have answers and answer that question. So I'm waiting for us. Let's answer. And I don't want the same thing that is here. So we can just give something something that like can actually. So let's go. 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 Okay. Wow. Oh, yes. I'm happy I'm getting response. That's good. That's good. I'm happy with the response so far. But we can do better. We can do better. Let's just try. Let's just try. Let's try our best. Let's try our best. Okay. Yeah, I like these answers that I'm getting. Hope it's not from ChatGPT. We didn't use ChatGPT to answer this question, because if we use AI, so I like the answers I'm getting actually. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. It means that we all understood what a resource group is. So I'm so happy. I'm so happy. And I will say of a truth, I'm really, really happy. I'm really, really happy. Okay. So we have done well. We have done well. So let me go through the answers to make the class interactive. So Mr. Abba Godwin, his own answer was virtual machine, just virtual machine directly. Why Bolaji Michael? His own answer was resource group are logical containers where you can deploy and manage Azure resources like virtual machine, web app. Wow, this is good. This just summarizes everything that I made mention of under resource group. This is great. This is interesting. So Brother Bello Ade Damola gave his own. It is a container where you can use to manage. I guess this S is actually a dollar sign, aggregates resources in a single unit, security boundaries. Yes, this is a very good one from that perspective. Then Dikin Oluwakomilawal, a resource group is a logical containers of VM storage account. Wow, it's a logical collections. That's it. That's the word. That's the word. Web apps, database. They are used to group related resources. Sure. Then we have Isioma Agwolo, Mrs. Isioma Agwolo. So which is she's giving us a definition that a resource group is a container used to wow. This single unit alone beats it. Single unit. While we have Mr. Owoleye Moses, Azure Resource Group are logical collections of Azure Virtual Network. This is okay. This is awesome. Then Resource Group are Mr. John Adibayo. Resource Group are platforms for sharing resources, e.g. a virtual machine. Wow, this is okay. So I'm happy with the response. I'm happy with the response. We have really done well. We have really done well. Does anybody have any question before we proceed? So we don't go too far before we start asking our questions. So if you have any question, please just raise your hand. Feel free to ask your question. All questions are allowed. So Chidubem in Kimka, you can answer. You can ask your question, sir.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
So for the number 2 question where we talked about availability zones, the third one that says offsite backup, you mentioned that in the time of outage, they had backups on the in the availability zones, which regions, or let's say which certain places like Nigeria used at that point when there was outage. So could you like explain why C is not an option for number 2 question?
Okay. So for that question now, so upside backup. When we say upside backup, so it's not a standard backup. So that was why the answer basically. Let me check that question. So the right answer actually is low latency. This low latency replication is still just like backup actually, because what replication is like you are replicating your documents, you are replicating your files from one data center to another data center, from one availability zone to another availability zone, and even on a wider scale, from one region to another region. So as it is, this low latency replication can go for offsite backup. So offsite backup is still good, but on the benefits, one of this offsite backup now is customers that can actually do this. So Microsoft go on a higher scale to even do replication for you. That the replication itself is even more than it's like it's on a higher scale of backup. Like just like in some environments where they have like maybe domain controllers now, where they have 2 domain controllers. Those domain controllers now are actually replicating information from one domain controller to another domain controller. So backup now is more or less like, okay, you are backing up one domain controller. So if that domain controller crash now, what it means is that if there's no replication to the other domain controller, some users you have created that day, or some changes some users have made won't replicate to the other domain controller. So that is why sometimes even backup too, you have to be doing it regularly. But with replication per seconds, as you are creating anything per seconds, it is replicating. So that's just offsite backup is still part of it, but that one is not really one of the major benefits that availability zone can give to customers. So I don't know if I've answered your question, sir.
Yes, you have. Thank you very much.
I thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Does anybody still have any other question? The ground is still open for questions. So. The ground is still open for questions. So I have Mr. Joseph AY. You can ask your question, sir. Hello, Mr. Joseph. If you are talking, we can't hear you, sir. Hello, Mr. Joseph. Okay. Since Mr. Joseph is not talking, I guess we should just continue with our class. Or Bra Victor, can you hear him? I can't hear him from my end.
I can't hear him yet too.
Oh, okay. No problems. So,
Bro Joseph, if you can hear us, you can please type your question. But Bro Emmanuel, you can go ahead, please.
okay, thank you. So the next aspect we are going to look at, like we made mention in the beginning slide, that we are going to look at Azure architecture. So now we are done with Azure architectural component. Now we are going to compute and networking. So let's continue from there so that we can just start. So I'll make it, even if today, next week Sunday, we can do more of labs. We may not really talk more of slide like this. We'll just do little slide, then more of lab. But I just want us to get all these foundations very solid so that at least if we want to maybe work as a solution architect or as a cloud engineer, we'll understand the terms like resource groups, subscriptions, boundaries, availability zone, things like that. So that's just why I just did it. So today I'll try to close on time, even before time, so that at least we can all rest. So now, one of the objectives we are going to gain in this particular module is we are going to understand the benefit and usage of all this. Now we are going to compare cloud computing types. We are going to compare compute types, which includes container instances, virtual machines, and functions. And we are still going to describe virtual machine options, including virtual machines, virtual machine skill sets. Then we are still going to also look at virtual machine availability set. So we talked about availability zone. So that's why it's even good that when we talked about region, because even me, I confuse myself sometimes with skill set, virtual machine availability set with availability zone. So availability zone now is on a different scale. That one is under regions. We have availability zone. But when you talk about availability set, so it has to do with a virtual machine. So it's a virtual machine that can have virtual machine availability set and availability zone. So at least it won't confuse us. So we are going to describe resources required for virtual machine. So if you want to create a virtual machine, now what are the resources you need to create a virtual machine? Then we are going to describe application hosting options such as Azure Web App, containers, and virtual machine. Like we use Docker very well to host our applications. Like even the application we are using, most of them we host them on Docker. So you can actually containerize, use Azure container options in the cloud to actually containerize your application. So we are going to describe virtual network, including the purpose of virtual network, Azure Virtual Subnet, Azure DNS, VPN gateway, and express routes. We are going to explain all this. So basically, this is more or less like a class where we are going to talk about like let's say we're just looking at everything we need to know in terms of, let's say, the basics of cloud computing. So let's go. Now we are looking at Azure Compute Service. As the name implies, compute. Compute is more or less like we are talking about virtual machine. We are talking about operating systems. You are talking about networking memory. You are talking about the components of a computer. So let me just use it that way. So Azure Compute now is more or less like an on-demand service. So it provides computing resources. So when we say computing resources now, all these are computing resources. Virtual machine is a computing resource. Then app service is a computing resource. Container instance is a computing resource. Azure Kubernetes service is a computing resource. Azure Virtual Network, Azure Virtual Desktop is a computing resource. So as it is like this now, when we say computing resource, let's even think about it. Let's think about it like me now. If I want to think about it, I can say computing resource is something that is running inside a computer. Like Brother Israel's laptop now. We're trying to run some configuration, then we use this laptop as a local server because the laptop has Docker and we're actually running some containers in the laptop and we're using it to host application. So now that is a compute solution for installing a container in his laptop. So his laptop now is the physical hardware. Why? If you want to connect to a virtual machine now, for sure, you need a computer. So things running on a computer is compute service. The things you install on a computer, such as Kubernetes. So Azure Kubernetes now needs to manage containers, like maybe when you have several containers. If you are actually doing the management, you understand that it's not easy for you to manage all the nodes and all the ports at the same time. But with Azure Kubernetes, it's managed that underlying infrastructure for you. You don't need to do all those things. So that's for compute resources. So we have different kind of compute resources. So one may ask, okay, some customers will just tell you, I'm having issues with my compute resources. So in that way, your mind should go that, it's like this customer is talking about container instance. It's like it's talking about app service. It's like it's talking about virtual desktop. So these are compute services that Microsoft have. We can see processors, we can see memory, we can see networking, and we can see operating systems. So that is compute service. So let's scale more. So for a virtual machine now, like we made mention that we are going to look at the components of a virtual machine. So Azure Virtual Machine now are software emulators of a physical computers. So it's more or less like it is emulating a physical. When you say we are emulating something, like we are copying it. So it's just like a physical computers. It's like a physical computer, just like our computer, like the computer I'm using to do this class now. That's just a virtual machine. But the advantage of a virtual machine is, let's say for instance, now I want to travel. Maybe I want to go to, let's say I want to go to Port Harcourt now. Sometimes if you get to the airport, some of us that our laptop is very heavy. That laptop alone can even take enough weight when you are actually offloading your luggage or when you want to do your boarding pass. So automatically, as it is, it's even better you have a virtual machine so that anywhere you are going to, you are not carrying any big laptop. Even if the laptop is a gaming laptop, it's big, you don't have that stress. So that's a virtual machine for you. So that's one advantage of virtual machine. All you just need to connect your virtual machine is just internet. So that's just it. So now virtual machine include virtual processor, just like our normal system. Our normal system runs on processors. We have experts here that really understand those processors of systems. So it runs on processors. Same also is a virtual machine. A normal system, we can't have a system without a memory. Either is 4 gig RAM, 8 gig RAM, or some people can even go as far as 32 gig RAM. So same also, you can also have your memory just like that in the cloud. So for storage, we have SSD, we have HDD. So just like we were creating virtual machine the other day, I say I don't want to use SSD because SSD will eat all my money. I can't use SSD, and at the end of the day, before you know, my money will just finish just like that. When I have other things I still need to learn and other things I still need to provision. No. And we also have networking also. So there must be a network in your virtual machine so that you can even connect to it. If your computer does not have network, if my computer does not have network, there's no way I can join this meeting and even present. It's not possible. So same also, a virtual machine also need a network. So it's an infrastructure as a service offering that provides total control and customization. Just like you have your computer, you can do anything you want to do with your computer. You can actually say you want to like you want to install anything you want to install. You want to install Steward Porter, you want to install anything you want to install. It's your property, it's your system. So that is also a virtual machine. It gives you total control. You can customize it. You can say you want to run 10 applications on it. It's not Microsoft business. If the application, if the VM is now hiking, maybe it's now spiking, like you are overusing the resources, you will be experiencing some issues, some lagging. So you can customize it and you can use it the way you want. So now we have virtual machine skill set. So skill set now is more or less like, this is a single virtual machine. Let's say, for instance, now I have a company that I'm actually running sales on, let's say I'm selling clothes and shoes. Let me now say I bought some goods. I bought them like 2 years ago. And those goods I bought, it has been in my e-commerce website for like, let's say 6 months, and I need money. I want to sell them. What will I do? I'll just go and do promo. That, okay, something I'm selling 10,000, I want to sell it 2,000. We know Nigerians and we know ourselves. So 2,000, I want to rush it to. At that moment, that particular website or the server hosting the application will be experiencing high traffic. So all you need to do, you can either scale out. You can scale out. Okay, I want to increase my resources. So we can see here now we have you adding several virtual machines so that as customers are actually loading you, as they are loading your website, there won't be anything like, the thing crash, or something happens. Someone will not tell you like the issue we're having when we're doing our test, like if 5 people connect to our network, other people will not be able to connect because at that instance the router is unable to accommodate more people. So the same thing can happen here. If your server where you're hosting your application in the cloud is unable to accommodate them, they won't be able to reach it. So as it is now, you can scale out when resources needs increase. Then you can scale in when resources are lower. So this one gives you more scalability. Let's take, for instance, now you are using a 16 gig RAM, a 16 gig RAM server to host your application, and you want to scale out. You have to go to Ikeja and go and top up your RAM. And it depends. Sometimes to even get RAM that are compatible with your system self, you can change RAM at the end of the day, the system will be dragging. But in this case, this one, you can just scale out. Okay, let's say you go to the market now, you top up your RAM, then you now sell those goods. Automatically, the RAM will just be there. It's not serving any use. But in the cloud, you can scale out, you can increase, and you can go down as the case may be, so that you can save your money. So that is for virtual machine scale set. So you can scale up, you can scale down. So the next one we will look at now is availability zone. Availability set. Like I made mention, it usually confuses me sometimes. Availability zone, availability set. So availability set now is more or less like it gives you access to domains. Like we have fourth domain 1, fourth domain 1, fourth domain 2, and fourth domain 0. So I know when we hear the word fourth, we're like, why is it fourth? Microsoft have several measures to actually work for us so that our virtual machine and our resources will actually work and won't have issues with it. So as it is like this now, this VM now is here. This is an update domain. This UD means update domain. So what does update domain does? Update domain keeps the VM grouped if they can be rebooted at the same time without causing an outage. So an update domain now, like we see, it keeps the VM grouped. If it keeps the VM group like if they can be rebooted at the same time without causing an outage. So let's note that an update domain keeps the VM grouped if they can be rebooted at the same time without causing an outage. That is an update domain. So what is a fault domain now? A fault domain group VMs based on common power and networking. So all these VMs now that are in these particular fault domains, why are they here? They are here because they have similar power and networking. So it's just like, maybe for instance, now you go to a data center, they have racks there where they have their servers. So most of those servers, they have the same network, they have the same networking, and they have the same power. That is why they can even be on the same rack. So just like this, so just like we have rack in our normal physical server, that is how Microsoft have rack too in their data center. But just that, because you can access it, you're accessing it over the internet. That's why it is cloud computing. So you're accessing those resources, those cloud resources, over the internet. Yeah. So now that's for fault domain and update domain. So update domain now groups VMs together that can shut down without causing any issue. While fault domain now, you are grouping VMs that have the same what? Common power and networking. So that's for availability set. So availability skill set now. Skill set is like the name inside, skill. You can scale up and you can scale down. Why availability set is maybe like, as the name implies, availability set. When maybe you are running an update. Okay, you are running an update down in your environment and you need users to still be able to connect. So Microsoft now have fault domain, so that in case you are restarting your VMs, users will have backup. They are now going far. They are now going far to group your VMs, like they are grouping them. Okay, these VMs now that have the same networking, they should be in the same fault domain. Then VMs that if the two of them goes down, it won't affect the infrastructure. It should be in update domain. So that's it. So let's go. Now we have already created a virtual machine. And last week we created a virtual machine, but the only thing we didn't install a web server package. So today I'm going to log into that virtual machine now, so that we are going to install a web server package on that virtual machine. So let me just switch. Let me switch a moment, so I can just log into that virtual machine so that we can actually install a web package on that virtual machine. So just hold on for me. Hold on a moment. Let me just bring this here. So I will just go to portal.azure.com, hit enter. Then from portal.azure.com, I'm going to sign in. It will ask me for, okay. It didn't ask me for authentication. Hope I have access to my resources. Okay, let me see. Now, let's go to resource group now. So in my own environment, these are my resource group. So if I did not group my resource group like this, I would have, okay, it's like somebody have a question. You can ask your question.
We can't see your screen. Or is
Oh,
it just
sorry, let me
Can't
share
see.
again. Let me share again, sorry. I thought I was still sharing. Thank you. Let me share again. Window. Okay. Okay, can you see it now? Is
Yes,
it,
yes,
is it?
yeah, I can see it now.
Okay. So let me just increase it because it's too small actually. Let me increase it so it will be big. Okay, I guess it's better now.
Just
It's okay.
help us increase the font size small.
Oh, okay, let me increase it.
But I can't see this. I can't see the screen now, please.
Okay, you can't see the screen. Okay, maybe I need
I
to
can't
stop.
do.
I need to stop sharing and reshare.
Tell him to zoom. Let him zoom the screen by himself. Let him zoom it. It will be
Oh,
bold.
okay. Okay. So can everybody see my screen now? Before I continue.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Nice. I can see.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want
I'm
everybody,
using my phone. I'm using my phone. Is that the reason why I'm not seeing the screen?
maybe like okay, click on my icon. Probably maybe you choose, or maybe I should stop sharing and share again, so that at least the screen may show. Let me stop sharing and share.
It's
See the
visible
screen
now.
as
Okay, is this showing? Okay, let me stop. Brother
no, I
Mike.
can't.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Let me just stop and share again. Let me stop sharing so I can share. Okay, so we can just continue with our lab. Hold on, where's my mouse? I'm trying to, don't know.
Continue.
Yeah, I'm coming. I want to just move my mouse to, okay, it's here already. Stop sharing. So brother Mike, I want to share again. So let me share now. So you see my screen. I believe you see my screen now. Okay, share. What about now? Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So it's actually good. Okay. So now let me go back and start again. I didn't know I wasn't sharing my screen the other time. Sorry for that. So now this is Azure Portal. So these are resources, example of services, Azure services that we have. So now, but since in the lab we want to create a virtual machine, but we created a virtual machine last week. So in creating that virtual machine now, we're just going to install IIS on that virtual machine. So meaning that we're going to add a feature to the virtual machine. So now the resource group we created last week was class of September. So let me click on class of September. Let me see if my resources is still there. So my resources is still in class of September. So these are the resources we created. We created an external disk. We created a virtual machine. We created a public IP, because without this public IP, we can't access this VM. We created a network security group, NSG. Then we created a virtual network. Like we're even mentioning that the component of virtual machine has processor. If I click on this virtual machine now, we're going to see all those components that we're saying that the virtual machine have. So we'll see them. So while it loads, loads. So we can see the VM size here. So this VM size is E4XV4. How many processor? 4 vCPU, then 32 gig RAM. This is a high one, 32 gig RAM. So this is the public IP. Then this is the health of the VM. DNS is not configured. So if we scroll down, we'll see more things. This is the virtual machine architecture. Hibernation is disabled. I didn't enable that. So these are the components of the virtual machine. But let us connect to this virtual machine so that we can just add IIS role to the virtual machine. So let me just connect to it. I've not for sure, before we connect to this virtual machine, we have to start it. I did not even start the virtual machine. So let me try and connect to it without starting it. Let's see if it will connect. That's one thing about virtual machine. If you don't start it, you can't connect to it. So what I did was I clicked on the download RDP icon here. So I'll now come to my download, then click on it so it will open. So let me just move the screen to this side. So this is it on my download. I'll just double click on it. Once I double click on it now, it pops up a connect button here. So if I click on connect now, let me see if it will connect. It may not connect. It won't connect because I've not started the VM. I've not started it. So but I just want us to practicalize it before we even, normally VMs doesn't take long like this. So it gave me an error. It said remote desktop can't connect to the remote computer for one of the following reasons. Remote access to the server is not enabled. Remote computer is turned off. The reason is remote computer is turned off. So let me go and start the VM. So it's even good so that at least we'll know how to start a virtual machine. Like, so now this is my VM now. If I come to class of September, I can come down. These are all the resources I have in class of September. So I have, let me see if I can, okay. These are all the resources I have in class of September. I have class 1. I have class 1 data disk. So let me open this class 1 VM now. So if I open the VM, we can see the start button here is not graded. Like here now, the stop button is graded. I can't stop it. So I need to start it. I need to start it. So I need to start it. So let me just start it. So we hold on while it starts. Okay. Okay. So it's still starting. So let me see notification. Let me just access my, so it's still starting actually. So I have to wait for it to finish starting before. So as it started, it's still starting. That's one thing with cloud. So sometimes due to network, so it might just take a while, but for sure it will start. Let's just be patient and hold on while it starts. Okay, good. It has started. So I'll just go ahead now and launch that virtual machine now. So let me launch it just like the way I opened the remote desktop. So let me move the remote desktop again because I've already downloaded it. Let me move it back to this screen. So let me click on connect now. Let's see if it will take time to connect. So it didn't take time. So automatically it's just connected. So the username we gave it was cloud training. So let me put the password. I hope I've not forgotten the password. So let me try again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, go. Oh, thank God, I remembered it. So I'll just connect to the virtual machine. So now let me bring the VM to this screen. So we are going to install IIS on this virtual machine, which is Internet and Information Service. So there are several ways we can install IIS, but me on my own, I would like us to install it. I would like us to install it from the GUI. But we can also install it on PowerShell. So this is the virtual machine now. So we're going to confirm that the name of the VM is class 1 VM. So let me expand it. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Okay. So let me click on configure this server. So we'll see the name of the VM. Okay. So we can see that the name of the VM is class 1 VM and it's currently on a work group. It's not on a domain. So now we want to add that IIS role to this virtual machine. So does anybody have a question? Anybody with any question before we continue to add the role? Okay, if there's no question. So this is a Windows server. It's a Windows server. The operating system is Windows Server 2022 data center. So if you want to add a role to a server, let's say this is a server now, you want to add a role. From the configure this server, you just click on add roles and feature. So the IIS is a role. So let me bring the slide back so that we'll see it. So the IIS that they are telling us to create is actually a role. So let me just share it back. So install web server package. So that's what we want to install. So let me exclude it again. So we'll now go next. It's actually a role-based and feature-based installation. We'll go next. So the server type, we can just leave the default. Then the server rules now, this is where we're now going to select what we want. So we're actually installing a web server on this particular virtual machine. So we'll just, if we look at the setting, there's one thing my boss always tell me, that once you click on any role, it is good for us to read what we have here. Like, we need to read the services that the role, what the role can do. Like a web server now provides a reliable, manageable, and scalable web application infrastructure. So a web server now is more or less like, it's what you use to handle your web infrastructure. So that's just a web server. So let me go next so I can add the role. So we don't need .NET framework. So let's just go role. Okay, who has a question? You can ask your question, sir. I see. So you can ask your
Hi,
question. Yeah,
yeah, man, well done. Good evening.
thank you, sir.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, do you give them a platform that they can register and start practicing the same thing as the training is going on so that they will have the knowledge?
Okay, so we actually wanted to do free Azure subscription, but for some reason, Azure is asking for dollar card.
Yes, yes.
So
But
which
there's a way to bypass it now. I didn't remember again.
Yeah. So, but today I'm going to still show how we can get those Microsoft Sandbox. So I'm going to show it so that at least
Oh, okay.
we can still practice. So
All
it's
right, no
part of.
problem. Thank you.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
By the way, I've sent the link for the attendance. It's in the chat. Please, let's endeavor to fill it.
Okay. So our feature is installing. Let's just stay tuned. Okay. So let it just load. So once it's finished now, I'm going to go to the website. This public IP now, we can all type this public IP on our mobile phone on our system. So it's going to query this server that I'm adding this IIS server role to. So now the role has been completely added. So let me close it. So if I close it now, I'm going to see IIS here. So IIS was not here before. So for me to manage IIS now, just like in a mechanic shop, if you want to fix a car now in a mechanic shop, you need your tools. Every workforce uses tools. Okay, Dikin, you can ask your question, sir. Hello, sir. Go ahead, sir. I can see your hand is raised, sir.
Yes, sir. Please, this your screen is very small. We hardly see what you are doing. So,
Okay, sir.
is there a way to make it big?
Okay, sir. Let me see how I can do it.
Dikin Oluwakumi, are you connected with your phone?
No, I'm using a laptop.
Oh, okay.
Let me see if it will be better now. Okay. So I believe it's big now. Is it big now? Is it better?
Yeah, it's better, but it's showing half of the. Maybe when you expand it.
Let me just do something. Let me
Okay.
maximize. Okay. So let's just manage it like this. Is it okay now? I guess
Yes.
A little bit, yeah, we can still see something there. It's okay.
okay, sir. So like as I was explaining, now I've added IIS row. So for me to configure this IIS row now, I need my tools. I'm seeing myself now as a mechanic. Let's say somebody brought a Range Rover for me that I should fix it. I need to bring my tools like my spanner and the rest. So in Server Manager, we have tools. So if we come to tools here, we will now see all the tools we need. This could be anything. It could be your spanner, it could be your screwdriver, as the case may be. But the tool I need here is Internet and Information Service. So let me open it, since that's the tool I want to work with. So this is the interface for IIS. So now I want us to browse to this public IP. Where is that public IP again? So let me just open another page here. So let me copy the public IP. Let me copy it. So we all can go to the website too. Let me open it here. See. So because we just added the web server role to the virtual machine. So from the VM, let's try to access it also. Why that one loads? Sometimes it might take time. So let me just open it from here. So that's just basically what the lab is. But since we created this virtual machine last week, so I was just like, okay, let's just add the IIS role to it. So let me collapse it so that I can actually see the site that I have. So if I collapse the site, default website, let me open this default website. Explore. Uh, I need to make the screen bigger so that I can see all the options. Just let me just put it to 100. Let me see. Okay, let me browse now. Let me browse to the website. So let me see. So we can see our web server. So this is our web server now. So I added a web server to this virtual machine. So this is the local host, just like the way we have our local host. So if a web developer now push an application to the backend, if you go to the local host, you are going to see it. You see it there. So that's just the way it works. So let's go back to our machine. Let's see if we can still access it. So it's saying not secured. We know it's not secured. So give us our web server. So sometimes again, if it's not loading, it could be that the ports are blocked. So I may need to allow the port from network security group, which we are going to look at, because we are going to be blocking some ports. We are going to use firewall. So we are going to do all those things in our lab. Okay, let us go. So now at least we have covered creating a virtual machine, and we have added a web server to it. So let's continue with our presentation. Let's continue with our presentation. So now we'll now talk about Azure Virtual Desktop. So we'll soon close. We just have how many minutes more? We have 25 minutes more. So let me just begin to wrap up. So Azure Virtual Desktop now is a desktop and app virtualization that runs in the cloud. So we may want to confuse ourselves, like, what's the difference between virtual desktop and virtual machine? So a virtual desktop now is more or less like, let's say for instance now, you want to actually create a PC in your environment. Let's say you have workers working in different places and you don't want to be buying systems for them. Virtual machine is very expensive. Meanwhile, because if you are creating a virtual machine for each person in your organization, you will spend a lot of money. But with Azure Virtual Desktop, you can create one virtual desktop infrastructure and create several VMs in that virtual desktop infrastructure, and many users will be able to connect to the virtual machine. So virtual desktop allows multiple people to connect to a particular VM, just like we have here. It reduces the risk of resources being left behind through multi-section deployment. So you can have multi people logged on one virtual desktop, like they can do their work. So this one can be like maybe you have your frontline workers, like those people that stay and welcome visitors that comes to the office. For you to be creating, for you to buy several, maybe you're having your infrastructure in the cloud, for you to be creating different virtual machines for them, you can just create virtual desktop. Each of them, when they come to the office, they log into that virtual desktop, they do their work with their profile, so that should in case you want to track anything, you can track. That's just a virtual desktop. So it's a desktop and app virtualization that run in the cloud, just like the way we have virtual machines like Hyper-V and VMware. So if you are using VMware now, you can use VMware to provision several VMs. So that's how Azure Virtual Desktop work. So you can have you can provision virtual machines and give your users access to it. So which we are going to do. We are going to create a desktop virtualization environment. We are going to do all that. So let's go. So we are just basically what we are doing, we are just talking about the whole fundamentals, the whole foundations that we need before we now go deep. From next week now, we'll be doing the real deployment where we'll be deploying different solutions. We'll deploy storage accounts, file share, we'll do the main tasks. So it will be like a project. So it will be like a real life scenario, then we'll solve it together. So now we have Azure Container Services. So Azure Container Services provide a lightweight virtualization environment that does not require operating system and management and can respond to changes on demand. So that is Azure Container Instances. So this one provide a lightweight. When we say lightweight, we know containers are lightweight. A virtual machine now is not lightweight, because that virtual machine now, if you want to, let's say, copy a virtual machine image to another hard drive, it will take a while. But container, they are lightweight. You can just easily like run a container. No. You can destroy the container, bring it up again. So they are lightweight. So another thing again that we need to know about it is that containers are virtualization environment. So unlike virtual machine, now you manage your operating system, but containers are lightweight. They are designed to be created and scaled out. So you can scale them out the way you want. So as it is now like this, we have Azure App Container Apps. So it's a PaaS offering like Container Instance that can load and scale. So all these are just services. The way you install Docker on your system, Microsoft is now telling you, instead of you to install Docker on your system and tomorrow your system crash, come and buy our service. Come and buy PaaS offering. Come and buy our platform as a service offering. We have Azure Container Instance for you. Come and buy it. Run your container or pod of containers in Azure. So this one now is more or less like on a high scale. You can run container or pods of container. So Kubernetes now is now the main boss. So with Kubernetes, it gives you an orchestration service for containers with distributed architecture and large volume of containers. With Kubernetes, you can run large volumes of containers at the same time. So that's one advantage of Azure Kubernetes service. So let's go. So the last but not the least is Azure Functions. So Azure Functions now supports serverless compute operations. So it's a serverless computing, and is an evolution that brings developers closer to business logic. So let's say there are some things that you do in businesses day to day. So with serverless computing now and bringing those logic, so you can deploy resources, you can create functions at the same time. Now, let's look at the differences and comparison between virtual machine, virtual desktop, and container. So a virtual machine now is a cloud-based server that supports either Windows or Linux environment. So virtual machines support what? Windows or Linux environment, while virtual desktop provides a cloud-based personal computer, Windows, and desktop experience. So this one provides a cloud-based personal computer, Windows, and desktop experience. But virtual machine only, like this one now, you can't have Windows server here. It's a cloud-based computer, Windows desktop experience, but this one you have either Windows or Linux. While container, you have no business with Windows or Linux. It is lightweight. It is a miniature environment, well suited for running microservices. can use it to run different containers. You can run different services together and have it function for you. So another thing again, virtual machine useful for lift and shift migration to the cloud. Let's say you have virtual machines in your environment on premise. You can actually migrate those virtual machines to the cloud. Then for virtual desktop, dedicated application to connect and use. This virtual desktop now is very important. Let's say, for instance, now you have an application that you don't want people to hack, just like the way we have our own application in church, where we have our steward portal that is our own dedicated application. So now, if you give people access to this steward portal, some of them, they can go and install it and even go and sell the application itself to somebody. But with virtual desktop, even if you want somebody to have access to steward portal, you can give the person a virtual desktop and you run some configurations in that virtual desktop that the person cannot copy the application out of that virtual desktop. So virtual desktop is useful for dedicated application you don't want people to have access to outside. You just want it to be for the organization. Then virtual desktop is good. So that there are some banks, like in some banks now that I know of, they connect to their VPC, their virtual PC. So most of their core banking application is there. It is not on their physical computer. That is an example of a virtual desktop, because they know that if they allow their staff to install those things on their computer, that means before you know it will leak. People will now start building something like that. So that's an advantage of a virtual desktop. And container now, they are designed for scalability and resiliency through orchestration. So if you want to scale, it's easier for you to scale with a container than with a virtual machine. So you can easily copy. Like I made mention of copy. VM hard disk is very large. Some of them, the lowest you see is 6 gig or so, or maybe something like that. But container, they are lightweight. Container could be maybe, let's say, 700 MB. 700 MB may even be too much, except maybe you have a lot of application, you have a lot of codes and a lot of underground things you are running on that container, else it won't even be that heavy. So another thing again of virtual machine, complete operating system package, including the host operating system. Virtual machine is complete operating system, but this one, multi-client login allow multiple users to log in to the same machine at the same time. Multiple people can log into the machine at the same time. So for containers, application and services are packaged in a container that sit on top of the host operating system. Multiple containers can sit on one host. So that's one advantage of container. So multiple containers now, you can be running different containers on the same operating system. If you have Docker installed, you can run multiple containers. You can even specify different ports for those containers that you can even be connecting to them at the same time. That's one advantage. But a operating system or a virtual machine, for you to even say you want to even have another operating system in that virtual machine, you need to enable virtualization so that you can create more VMs on it. But with container, you can run a lot of container. You can host them on that same system. So that's one advantage. So now we'll go to the next part. So if you have any question, you can just raise your hand and ask your question. So for app service now, so this one is a fully managed platform to build and deploy, and just like the way we in our Windows server now, we just added IIS role. Then we added IIS role to the Windows server. So the same service that we added to the Windows server, Microsoft is offering it to you, Azure App Service. Okay, instead of you to be running your application on your IIS on your server, come and run it on Azure. Bring the work. If it's a .NET application, if it's a .NET Core application, if it's Node.js, if it's Java, if it's Python, or if it's PHP, bring it and run it on Azure. So it's a platform as a service offering with enterprise-grade performance, security, and compliance requirements. So that is for Azure Apps. We are still talking about compute services. We are still talking about compute services. We started with the virtual machine. Then from virtual machine now, we went to Azure Virtual Desktop. Then we talked about containers. Now we're talking about Azure App Service. So now the next one will go to Azure Network, Azure Virtual Network. So for resources to communicate, you need a virtual network. Just like the way I'm able to log in and access the internet from my system, I'm using my internet. So that's how we need a virtual network for your resources to connect. So public endpoints accessible from anywhere on the internet, while private endpoints are accessible only from within your network. So virtual subnets segment your network to suit your need. So subnet is what you use to segment your network, just like the way we have in our physical environment. Servers are on different subnets. Clients' computers are on different subnets so that they can segment their network. If you are pushing policies, maybe you are the network administrator, you are pushing policies. You can push policies to your servers and it won't affect your users so that at least it will be fine. So your users won't complain. We have network peering. So with network peering, let's say for instance now, you have different virtual network and you want them to communicate together. So you can use virtual network peering to actually do that so that your virtual machines can communicate with each other. So we are going to stop for today. So who has any question, you can just ask. So from next week, we are going to go deep into the main deal. So I just said, okay, let me touch the fundamentals first before I now go to Azure Administrator fully. So we have wrapped up for today. Does anybody have any question or contribution? You want to contribute something? So you can just ask. If you have any question, you can go ahead. Bro, Victor, over to you.
Yes, sir. Please, is there anyone that has a question? Okay. And I hope we have all filled the attendance. All right, I assume everyone has done so. All right, and also in the attendance form, there's a place for comments. Feel free to also add your questions there. And I believe Bro Emmanuel is also available throughout the week to answer questions as they come up, right?
Yeah, I'm available anytime, any day. I'm
Please.
available.
All right.
Please.
So you can,
Please, where did you send the attendance? On which platform?
the chat here. Let me resend it.
On this Google Meet.
Yes.
Please, bro,
And
Victor.
11. Yes, sir.
Please, the recording that you said you will send to us, the last lecture, they have not received it.
Yes.
And also the slide for last lecture. Please do and help us so that we can be doing a revision on what we have been taught so we can balance up. Please.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Earlier in the meeting. Okay. All right, sir.
Hello?
Earlier in the meeting, I stated that we had issues with the YouTube channel at first, but then few hours before today's class began, I sent a link to the group, which I'm going to tag now. So if you're on the, I believe everyone here is on the hardware group. So I'm going to tag the link again, or let me just resend it. Let me just resend the link so that everyone will see
Thank
it.
you.
So that link will take you to the repository that contains the recording of last week's class, the slides, and it also contain that same link is the link we'll be using for the subsequent classes. So the recording for today's class, the link will be added to that repository, so you can access it. So I've sent it again.
Thank you, sir.
I've sent it again. So yeah, please. I've also resent the attendance, bro. Who asked the question the other time?
Yes,
Bro,
I've done that. I've done that.
All right. So I believe we are all fine. We are settled. All right then. So please, bro Olanipekun Gudari, please give us the closing prayer.
Praise the Lord.
Hallelujah.
We say, Father, thank you, Lord Jesus, for today's lectures, for today's training. We give you all the glory for the time spent. Father, oh Lord God, let the lectures that we have taught today begin to have a fulfillment in our life in the name of Jesus.
Amen.
Let it begin to form a part in our career in the name of Jesus.
Amen.
Father, we soak the lecturers into your hands. Refill him in the name of Jesus.
Amen.
Thank you and thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord.
Father, as we go tonight, go with us.
Amen.
Amen.
For in Jesus' mighty name we are prayed.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So, what do we say to our facilitator? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
For yet another time.
Thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
I look forward to seeing everyone, same time, same station next week. Have a great week ahead.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Victor.
Good night.
Good night to you.
All right, sir.